Okay, so we had been talking about commitment as distinct from guilt. And next, we'll talk about trust as distinct from anxiety. So I'm talking about these as spontaneous experiences, completely distinct from what people might socially display in their speaking or in their facial gestures or whatever it may be. So if I take actions that are in correspondence or alignment with my motivations, then I experience commitment. If I take actions that are specifically contrary to my motivations and commitment, I experience guilt. And part of the guilt could be that I'm not doing the thing that I want to be doing. But the more contrary my actions are to my real interests, the more intense the guilt would be. So if I do something that's not really contrary to my interest, but also not in alignment with my interest, I might be bored. I keep doing this thing. I'm not really interested in it. I'm not really guilty for doing it. I'm just bored. And if I do something that I really hate that I'm doing, that would be intense guilt. If I do something that I would really rather not do this thing, but I am, then there's going to be, we might say, a moderate guilt, more moderate distress. Maybe I regret that I am doing this right now, but I am doing it, and I regret that I'm doing it. I wish I was doing the thing I wish I was doing, but I am doing it, and I regret that I'm doing it, but I'm doing it. I regret that I keep doing it, whatever. There can be that sincere regret that is a less intense kind of response than what we'll call full-on guilt. So I do the thing that fits with my inspiration, and I experience commitment. How about trust and anxiety? Those are signals that are interpersonal. So these aren't signals about an action that I take or a result that I produce as far as being effective at some course of action. Trust and anxiety are social experiences. We could say reassurance or comfort and discomfort or tension. Repulsion, attraction and repulsion in a social context. So as for trust and anxiety, what are the sources of those two contrasting effects? When we intuitively perceive that someone is encouraging us in a way that is in alignment with our innate motivations, we spontaneously experience a physical response that we can label trust. When we actually recognize and accept that they're encouraging us in a way that fits with our actual motivations, then we experience trust. Or then we experience something that we could label trust. In contrast, when we intuitively perceive, we could be wrong, but when we intuitively perceive that someone is pressuring us in a way that's contrary to our innate motivations, we spontaneously experience a physical response, which we can label anxiety or discomfort. I want to make an aside here because I was previously talking about the presumption of other people pressuring me. So if I presume that other people are pressuring me, then I sincerely perceive them to be pressuring me, I'm going to experience anxiety and discomfort because I sincerely perceive and presume and expect to be pressured. So any interaction with other people, I'm going to be anxious about. I'm going to have social anxiety. I'm going to be shy. I'm not going to want to interact with people because I expect people to pressure me. In general, they're all out to take advantage of me or to get me to satisfy their own, vanity as far as they feel good about themselves. They feel bad about themselves fundamentally, so they want me to do things where they get to feel powerful or where they get to feel, they expect to be congratulated by me because I should be grateful for their good intentions. So they're going to interact with me in ways that, are just conflicted. They're kind of gross or sticky or creepy or whatever. Sticky like gooey is how I mean sticky. So it's messy, like molasses, like honey, whatever. Let's not get off into that too far right now. Maybe later. So if I presume that other people are going to interact with me in a way that I don't like, then what do? I withdraw from people in general. Because in general, I expect people to distract me, harass me, criticize me, guilt trip me, whatever it is. So I'm going to withdraw. So that's certainly part of my personal history where I significantly seclude myself from other people. Why? So that I can really selectively notice who do I feel comfortable with, who do I trust, and who do I feel hesitant about, who do I feel resistant toward. And initially, or in early stages, transitional stages, I just have a generic, accusation that other people are pressuring me or, abusive. So I'm expecting bullying, abuse, whatever, some variation of those kind of negative things. Things that I don't like are what I'm expecting, so I withdraw. So I may start with that presumption that other people are, pressuring me. So I feel anxiety or discomfort around new people in general, around people in general. Especially if it's an unfamiliar kind of discomfort, there's certain kind of discomforts that are familiar, so they're a little more comfortable, less uncomfortable than a new interaction, a new person. Also, if I'm trying to hide my shame, then I'm going to feel anxious about anybody that I perceive as a possible threat to my mechanisms for hiding shame. So it may be that I presume other people are pressuring me. I'm going to accuse them of that if they don't run away after my first, displays of weirdness or whatever. And eventually, I may withdraw my kind of habitual, reflexive presumption that other people are pressuring me, and I may experience, well, this person doesn't really seem to be pressuring me. They're not pushing me in a way that's contrary to my innate motivations like I'm so used to. This is weird. This is unusual. This is even confusing. And then eventually, I trust that the way this person is interacting feels good and is challenging in a way that's fun, interesting, whatever the experience might be. So there can be that shift, and certainly I may interact with a particular person over time, and sometimes feel trust toward them, and so other times feel anxiety and discomfort in relation to them. That subject, I don't know. I don't like talking to that person about that subject, or I don't like talking about that subject in general, or I don't like talking to that person in general, or whatever it is. I have all these different experiences, and then I don't like talking to that person in general. And then a year later, a month later, whatever, I talk to them and I'm like, oh, you know what? It's not so bad. They're hilarious now. I get that they're trying to manipulate me, but it doesn't really bother me. It's like kind of funny. I don't get hooked into it. I don't distrust them. I'm just kind of immune to them or whatever. I find them kind of irrelevant. Their presence or absence is trivial. Or maybe just slightly uncomfortable. I see how tense they are. I see how anxious they are and how arrogantly they're trying to hide their anxiety, and I don't really want to deal with it. I don't really want to deal with them. They're kind of annoying, but they're not. I can tolerate them in certain doses without having to withdraw. I don't feel anxious. I just feel like distracted by them. So that's another possible experience. And then eventually, with some people, maybe very few, but maybe quite a few, I feel trust, at least in regard to some kind of issue. I feel trust toward or in relation to certain people, with them, in relation to them, whatever. It seems like some people trust my motivations, so I trust them because they trust my motivations. They trust innate motivation in general, including mine. And I feel, wow, that person trusts my innate motivations. They're interested in them. They're not trying to manage or repress certain motivations of mine. They're open, they're pure, they're refreshing, whatever my experience is, or however I label them. So to summarize, when we act on trust, that produces commitment. When I act on, accurate trust, let's say, if I think that somebody's promoting, encouraging me towards my self-interest, and then I take action on that trust, then that would produce commitment, as long as the actions really are in alignment with my self-interest, then I'm going to experience commitment. Slowly, quickly, however long it takes me to register it, I'll experience commitment, and eventually that can lead to pride, because commitment can lead to increasing effectiveness until the point of, satisfactory results and pride. In contrast, when we act in response to anxiety, or if other people are pressuring us, or we perceive them to be pressuring us, then we act in response to anxiety, especially in a way that's contrary to our innate motivations. Then we experience guilt, and that can eventually lead, if we're effective in that activity, to shame, the experience of shame. So when we're acting out of, based on somebody intimidating or pressuring us, or if we're relating to them as someone who pressures us, whether they are or not, if we're relating to them as someone who pressures us, then we will typically desire to hide or deny our experience of anxiety. We don't want to say to the bully, "You're a bully." Why? Because we're scared of them. So we're not going to confront an effective bully. We're going to comply. We're going to obey. We're going to concede, or what do you call it, surrender, that kind of thing. So if somebody is effectively intimidating us, we're not going to criticize them. We're not going to withdraw with them openly. Or if we do withdraw with them, we're going to say, "Oh, well, I only did that because da da da." We're going to throw apologies and justifications and a lot of complexity. And we're not just going to simply say, "Look, I don't like being around you. I think that you're a bully." We're not going to say that to somebody we're afraid of, not when we're alone, only when we have a bunch of other people around us in a context socially in which we feel comfortable saying that. We're not going to say that spontaneously. If we're terrified of a bully, we don't say, "You're a bully, please stop it." It doesn't work. If we do say it, probably wouldn't work. Maybe it would. Who knows? But I'm wanting to explain the typical behaviors that, we can observe. Somebody gets bullied. If they're really scared, they comply and they quiet down. They do not speak up. They just conform, and they shut down their emotional expressiveness, and they may even develop pretenses to always be happy or always be kind. Why? Because they don't want to be criticized for being selfish. That's a really popular one. So I don't want to be criticized for being selfish, so I go out of my way to be kind and loving and helpful and compassionate and caring and all these different things. In the case that I have certain repulsive experiences and they reach a certain level of intensity, that can produce an experience called humility. So if I experience intense anxiety, that can lead to humility, where for one detail, I admit that there's anxiety present because it's so intense that I can pretend, and I can deceive some people maybe and make them think that I'm calm when I'm actually just clammed up. But I know that I'm anxious. I'm not going to try and, trick everybody. I know that there's people that I can't trick, so that's the experience of humility. If I'm experiencing guilt or shame, I may attempt to hide that, to distract people from it, but in some cases, I give up the pretense, and that involves humility. If they directly confront me, or if they kind of discreetly hint that they can see what's really going on, I may, experience an element of humiliation. Yeah, you found me out. I was pretending. I was distracting. I was, throwing around blame and scapegoating, but it was really just a background of guilt and shame that I was projecting. And if I get that somebody sees that and, there's no value in me continuing to maintain the pretense, then I stop. I experience the humility. And it can be kind of refreshing, but it's also, scary because there's that background of anxiety and insecurity, and somebody can see me being insecure. I hope they don't take advantage of me, but at some point I just kind of accept that I've been caught. They can see my anxiety. They can see my guilt. So when humility spontaneously arises, a sense of appreciation can suddenly come into focus, and what is being appreciated, or what's the attraction? for trust, commitment, and pride, for the experiences of trust and commitment and pride. So if somebody sees through my deceptions and, my coping mechanisms, humility can be my spontaneous experience, and depending on how they respond, if they see through it and don't condemn it and even validate it, or are truly compassionate, like spontaneously compassionate and empathic toward me, then I can have trust for them, and then action can result where there's like sharing and talking about it, and then commitment, and then pride for having talked about it, and especially if the conversation goes really well, and I think, well, that was a really high quality conversation. I really feel good about that. So that's pride. So rather than scrambling my innate motivations or displaying them as scrambled, rather than being confused and being incoherent and being disorderly, I can have my innate motivations just be there. I can be present to them. I'm not ashamed of them. I'm just like, yeah, they're what they are. Those are my motivations, or those are some of them, and I accept them. I respect them. So respect is present, and what's not present is being intimidated or terrified into hiding my motivations, into suppressing them. So if I'm interacting with somebody, and even if there's like 100 people around us who are all suppressing, their own motivations and attempting to suppress mine or whatever, there can be lots of criticism and condemnation around in a social context. If there's one other person present who I feel comfortable with and feel validated by, in that sense of valued by, they value my motivations, they value me, that can be a stark contrast. And if there's a social context in the vicinity that isn't scary, the fact that there's other people making condemnations and criticisms and threatening punishments doesn't need to scare me. If I don't feel threatened by their threats, then there you go. I'm not intimidated. I'm not bullied. My motivations are what they are. I know it. Maybe one other person, recognizes it and respects it. And if other people go on with their delusions and, maybe they misinterpret what's going on for me, and I don't correct them. I'm like, okay, they've got their own, they've got their own process and their own anxiety and tension, and they're doing what they're doing, and I see that, I respect it. I'm not going to fix it right now, or I'm going to attempt to intervene and interrupt and fix, correct it, or offer them some other alternative. Whatever, that's a secondary issue. There's that and first primary issue of I respect my own motivations. At least one other person also respects my motivations and encourages me, so I experience that connection with them, that emotional connection, trust, commitment. In terms of interacting with them in particular, I can have that commitment. There can be pride. And there can be lots of people that accept my motivations, even if there's 50% or 80% or 90%. There can be lots of people who accept my motivations. Some of the people who tend to accept motivations most innocently would be children. So children, are just interested, or at least in some cases, children are interested in someone's real motivations and interests. They feel it. They trust. If I'm around my grandkids, I was talking about, somebody practicing basketball or walking for the first time and all those kind of things. If I can feel their trust for me, then I feel comfortable around them. They are displaying their internal motivations innocently, purely. They're not all suppressed. I enjoy being around them. I may have that sense of wanting to protect them, and there can be lots of social complexity and tension. And here I am interacting with a toddler, and what a relief it is in some cases to interact with a toddler, because they're innocent and pure and fun, and they're displaying intelligence openly. It may not be a high level of intelligence, but the open display of it is delightful. They're proud, they're committed, they're enthusiastic. There are all these things that I remember being, and there can be a lot of social context in my midst of people who are all tense and anxious and pretentious and guilty for, consistently acting out of alignment with their motivations. But that doesn't concern me. Here again, well, I got this toddler to interact with, or I got an adult that, maybe with my grandparents, or, could be a really old person that at least they get me. At least they are relaxed and appreciative and respectful. And so there's, contrasting experiences. It can be one or two people in my midst that I feel really most comfortable with. It could be that everyone around me I feel comfortable with. And if other people feel uncomfortable around me, that's on them. I don't feel uncomfortable around them. They might feel uncomfortable around me. I might notice it. But I don't have to fix it, and I might. In specific cases, I might, address that. So if I've been hiding from what inspires me, or if I've been hiding what inspires me, I may suddenly realize that my old methods of hiding are no longer effective. If I've been hiding from what inspires me, then my own methods of hiding from what inspires me might no longer be effective. Again, especially in the midst of that toddler or that, it could be a stranger on an airplane, but I'm with somebody who I'm not being, let's say I've habitually become pretentious. If I'm not being pretentious with that individual, then all of a sudden I may notice, wow, that really does matter to me. That really strikes me as powerful. Maybe I tear up or feel, that grief and that guilt or that pride. I tear up with pride, I tear up with guilt, whatever, regret. I have that spontaneous clarity arise. So when inspiration is clear, relevant actions follow. That's typically what would happen. If there's no inhibitions to my action, then I'm going to feel my inspiration and take actions in alignment with that. That's, predictable. When my inspiration is clear and I start taking relevant actions, then there's going to be an unmistakable focus on effectiveness. It's going to be kind of relaxed focus. It's not a tense, pretentious focus. It's just a simple, wholehearted, single-minded focus on effectiveness. It's not like a external discipline, I'm conforming, I'm a very determined person kind of focus on effectiveness. I just care about the things I care about. I'm naturally focused on the things that naturally are intriguing or inspiring to me. And I want to be effective in producing results that are naturally motivating to me. Of course, simple. So there will be a respectful interest in disappointment rather than an avoidance of disappointment. Disappointment will be a signal that someone is pursuing the right goal but has not yet effectively produced that goal. We've already covered this a little bit. When disappointment arises, there will be absolutely no lapse in commitment, in motivation, or in inspiration. So disappointment arises, that actually focuses commitment further. The more intense the disappointment, when I'm acting in alignment with my innate motivations, the more focused I am on being effective. Because I just produced a disappointing result and I felt how disappointing it was. Oh, man, I just, used that time and those resources and got that result. All right, let's be more attentive. Let's be more focused on effectiveness. Simple. All right, good. Ready for a Jar Jar impression? Let's just throw that in. I have no idea how this fits right now, but I'm just going to go back to that one because I found it entertaining. You should be ashamed. You shouldn't be so proud of yourself. Okay. I actually found that a bit hard to do with my vocal cords, so I coughed. All right, calming down, slowing down, catching breath. All right, trust. Let's talk about trust. I know it's kind of, I'm excited, maybe even anxious about some of these subjects. Forgive me. Forgive me. Trust. Let's talk about trust. You ready? I am. Here we go. Trust is ultimately not about someone else. Why do you say that? That's weird. Trust is ultimately not about someone else. Trust is about recognizing what inspires me. As I act in alignment with trust, I experience commitment. Until I act in alignment with trust, my experience will be pervaded by anxiety, guilt, shame, even pretentiousness. Until I act in alignment with trust, there's like an internal self-disrespect, and I'm a self-sabotage, a self-invalidation, self-inhibition, a self-repulsion. I'm avoiding my self-interest. Until I act in alignment with trust and with what really motivates me, until I respect the importance of social interaction, that's going to be an issue. So if I'm pretending that all social interaction is good, or all social interaction fits with my self-interest, there's going to be anxiety there. There's going to be pretense anxiety that someone might see through the pretense. If I recognize that some people, maybe not very many, maybe hardly any at all, if I recognize that some people have interests that correspond to mine, and some people have interests that compete or conflict with mine, then I'm going to trust some people more than others. I'm going to trust certain people in regard to certain subjects, but not others. And as I act in alignment with trust, my experience will shift toward commitment. More and more of my, intuitive sense of who I can trust will be right. I'll get better at it the more I trust. And, I'll get better at trusting people accurately. My assessments of them will get better the more I experiment and get it right sometimes and get it wrong sometimes. I start to develop that discernment. And until I act in alignment with trust, until I act in alignment with my sense of what really fits my best interest and the people that respect my best interest, until I act in alignment with my sense of who fits my best interest, there will be anxiety. The more that I deny or avoid interacting with people who fit my best interest, the more that there will be anxiety, guilt, and shame, or at least anxiety and guilt. So the spontaneous experiences that we've mentioned here, pride, shame, commitment, guilt, and anxiety and trust, are signals. And what do they signal? What's the value of them? They're signals which allow me to recognize what inspires me and what does not inspire me. The signals are my inner compass, which do not need any extra internal... I had a typing error there in my notes. The signals are my inner compass, which do not need any external motivation. I said it wrong. I read the wrong word. The signals are my inner compass, which do not need any external validation. When I feel guilt, I know it. When I feel shame, I know it. When I feel pride, I know it. When I feel trust, I know it. They don't need any external validation. There's no required paranoia about external criticism. When there is no paranoia about external criticism, then I'm more open to noticing what my experience is and what my signals are, my inner compass signals. So if I do have paranoia about will I be criticized, do I need to display pretenses to avoid criticism? Well, that's going to obscure my sensitivity to my signals. I'm going to be distracted from just my own experience. Again, that's a pretty normal experience for most people. On occasion, they experience paranoia or self-consciousness. Paranoia about external criticism, as in self-consciousness. So they're tense, they're anxious. They have to manage their, what they display to others and try and, be attentive to other people's opinions, at least in a temporary context. And when that context is lasting, then we would typically start to develop habits to interact with others in order to maintain our familiar pretenses and in order to avoid the criticisms that we are so familiar with that we organize our lives around avoiding those kinds of criticisms. So social anxiety is about social pressure and social criticism. There are various kinds of anxiety, but social anxiety is a result of ongoing experiences of intimidation, bullying, pressuring, criticism, harassment. There is no guilt in having been targeted with social pressure, such as having been targeted with guilt trips. There's no, blame. There's no internal. There's nothing fundamental about me and nothing intrinsic or essential about me. If certain people target me with social pressure or harass me, that's not intrinsic to me. That's just something that happened between whoever and that other person and myself, or those other people and myself. They pressured me. They competed with me. They confused me. They indoctrinated me. They harassed me. They bullied me. That's what happened. It's not like I did anything to deserve that. That's just what happened. When I respect my experiences of anxiety, guilt, and shame, those repulsive experiences, they become valuable signals, or I get value from them as signals. When I respect them, I get value from them. They don't become valuable signals. They've always been signals that potentially are valuable. And when I respect them, then I can get the value of them. I am valuing them. When I value them, I get the value of them. When I respect them, I get the benefit of them. So they are my allies in repulsing me away from what is contrary to my inspiration. They are part of my inner guidance system. These are my allies. Yeah, I trust them just as I trust the experiences of commitment and pride. When I have guilt, thank you. I wanted to know that. That's good to know. When I have anxiety, thank you. That's good to know. Is it social anxiety? Thank you. That's good to know. I'm experiencing pressure and discomfort socially. Like this person is harassing me. Like they're unsafe. Like they're distracting me. Like they're trying to tangle me up in something. Oh yeah? I might get mad. I'm anxious at this pressure and I might get mad. Instead of avoiding other people's anger or avoiding my own anger, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be mad. If somebody's crossing my boundaries, they might find out. I might communicate that to them. Directly, indirectly, or both indirectly and indirectly. Quickly, slowly, or both quickly and slowly. You pressure me, you intimidate me, I will withdraw if I can and I feel, unsafe. First, I'll withdraw, and then I may do other things as well. If somebody pressures me, I might push back. I would probably only push back if I think that would be, effective, if I think that would be valuable. But I will avoid discomfort. I will intervene and interrupt discomfort. I will resolve anxiety when I value it. I will attempt to resolve anxiety. If there's a relationship that's so important to me that there is ongoing tension and anxiety and discomfort, I'm more likely to address it. I might withdraw from it and then slowly, gradually, calmly address it. But much more likely to address it if it's an interaction or a relationship that I care about. So if I care about improving the quality of interaction I have with a certain person, then I'm going to feel commitment to taking actions to build a better quality of interaction with them. And I'm going to feel pride if I'm successful. I notice my inner signals. I notice what I trust. I notice when I experience commitment. I notice when I experience pride. I notice when I experience inspiration and motivation and enthusiasm and power and vitality. Oh, I didn't write that, but yeah. I am proud. I am proud of you. I am proud of me. Good job. Okay. I notice when I experience humor. Is that on my list? I notice my inner signals. I notice when I trust. I notice when I trust. I notice what I trust. I notice who I trust. I notice trustings. Yes, I notice trustings. I notice when I experience commitment, joy, delight, pride, inspiration, motivation, and humility. I notice when I experience, that person can see through some of my coping mechanisms. I'm pretty good at some of those coping mechanisms, but apparently not good enough to trick that person, to deceive them, to delude them, to convince them of some, lie that I did because it's the perfect thing to do or it's the right thing to do. Was it the perfect thing to do for me to develop certain coping mechanisms of being pretentious if I was in a context of social pressure and intimidation and bullying and harassment and criticism and punishment? If I then developed certain coping mechanisms and got reasonably good at them, that's just a skill. It would be nice to relax that skill, to do things that are more direct instead of skillfully avoiding my inspirations and motivations. How about skillfully pursue them? Yeah, I still have this other skill of kind of, how to cope with pressure. So it's useful to know how to cope with social pressure. So if I've been subjected to a lot of social pressure, a variety of kinds, extreme intensities of it, it's reasonable that I would get good at dealing with it. eventually I might get kind of good at dealing with social pressure. How would I do that? By being subjected to social pressure. Like, there's really no other way. Why would I even give an element of concern to how to maintain safety in the midst of social harassment unless I'd been subjected to social harassment? If I'm around, encouragement and support and safety, then I don't ever develop a skill of avoiding social harassment. But if I've been around some degree of social pressure, then it's typical that I would respond to it in ways including hiding my actual experience, distracting others, diverting myself, and pretending to be whatever people say that I should be, and pretending not to be whatever people say that I should not be, if the people saying those things are important to me, if they have power in relation to me. And over time, of course, I might become more powerful, less dependent. I begin to relax my pretenses and withdraw from people that I don't find as trustworthy or that I find uncomfortable. And I stick to subjects and interaction that I find comfortable. So some people, I trust them and I'm comfortable with them in general, but I see that they're not comfortable about certain subjects. So I'm not comfortable around them about those subjects, perhaps, or only eventually. So it's just basically the inner compass idea is we have inner compass. We have these different allies within our inner compass, or these different directions, like repulsive directions and attractive directions, or attractive orientation, whatever. Attractive magnetism and repulsive magnetism, or just repulsion, whatever. So we have all these different contrasting experiences. I can trust my own experience. I can value my own experience. I can value my own experience. Well, that sounds like having an inner compass and using it. The fact that I may have pretended not to have an inner compass, or I may have not used it at certain times, I may have done things that didn't fit with my inner compass, and I was guilty about that, and when I was effective, I was ashamed, and that's no issue. I have an inner compass. I was intimidated, harassed, bullied, scared, punished, whatever. I used my inner compass when I did. When I did use it, I felt commitment. And when I was successful, I felt pride. Simple, isn't it? Well, obviously there was a fair amount of complexity in the background in some cases, but ultimately, perhaps somewhat simple. Perhaps a relief. Perhaps something that I find to resonate with me. My inner compass is awesome. My inner compass, awesome. Yay. All right. How do you relate to your inner compass?